My name is Jenny Rodger, and I'm associated with the University of Western Australia and the Perron Institute for Neurological and Translational Sciences. So this is always the most tricky thing to talk about. I'm a scientist, but I also speak several languages, and I'm actually fluent in French because I went to a French school when I was growing up. And I love reading French novels and watching French movies to keep my language skills up. So MS is a really fascinating disorder. It's devastating for the people who have it, but it's really fascinating for scientists because it's a breakdown between the communication of the different cell types in the brain. And what really fascinates me in neuroscience is trying to understand how the brain works. So any opportunity to get a better idea of how those different cells work together and what might go wrong is really, really interesting to me, and that's what's motivated me to get involved in MS research. So the brain, it's become really obvious recently that the brain is not an isolated organ. So it involves all of the other parts of the body. We've heard about the gut microbiome and the gut-brain axis. We know that the immune system is really, really involved in how the brain works. So understanding all of those things and putting them together in the context of MS, I think has opened up a whole new paradigm, new way of thinking about how the disease happens and how it might be possible to cure it. So my research takes into account a lot of those different things, the holistic view of how the brain works. And in particular, I'd like to emphasize that it's very basic research. So we're not actually working with patients. We're not actually working to try and find a direct cure to deliver to patients. But we're trying to find the underpinnings of what happens in MS, why the cells in the brain don't talk to each other, why they don't work together anymore. And specifically, I'm interested in that aspect of myelination. So the cells that wrap around neurons and insulate them and make the connections work faster, those are the cells that seem to die in MS. And what we want to do is try to find a way to keep them alive and make them work better for longer, and so that all of the terrible symptoms that you get in MS simply won't happen. Well, I think I have sort of addressed it already, talking about that fundamental understanding, because if we don't know how brain cells interact with each other, then it's really difficult to make things better when there are problems like in MS. But also, I think the sort of approach that we're taking with my collaborators, for example, Professor Kayleen Young in Tasmania, she's shown some really remarkable results that non-invasive brain stimulation, so they're techniques that we can use to increase electrical activity in the brain. And it doesn't involve giving people electric shocks. It doesn't involve any sort of surgery or any drugs. It's completely non-invasive. And having a treatment that can potentially improve the communication between cells and the survival of those oligodendrocytes using a technique that's non-invasive, I think is really, really novel and very exciting. So I love working in the lab. I have to admit I don't work in the lab very much anymore because I spend a lot of my time supervising students, writing grant applications, publishing papers, which is also a lot of fun. But working in the lab is fascinating because you're in there actually doing things that nobody else has ever done before. So you're discovering new data, new information, new insights every day. Well, maybe not every day, but it's a really, I find that very, very motivating, but it is a long game. It's not something that happens every day, but in the long term, bringing out new understanding of how the brain works is just amazing. It's something that I find very, very satisfying.